the world of textbooks, you have people knocking on your doors and asking you, have you ever considered writing your own? That happened, and it would happen to be a Great River Learning acquisitions manager. I mean, even textbook publishing, like who would have thought that at one point in my life I would write a textbook? I mean, I was an adjunct professor, and who was I wasn't responsible for making any decisions about anything. And certainly wasn't thinking that I had the capability of doing that. But, look, I have a doctorate, I know how to write, and there were folks who were willing to help me. I'm very famous for saying that it's the stupidest thing I've ever done and the most intelligent thing I've ever done, because it was really hard to do. It was something I'd never done before, never considered doing. So making the time to create the textbook was, way back when, was a challenge, but the rewards on the other side have been just fantastic. Being able to completely redesign the music appreciation classes here for CSU. We went from a couple of classes of 70 students to well over 2,100 students a year. I mean, we offer so many sections of this class. They're very popular because of the vision of having taught the class and knowing, the things I didn't like in the other books that were offered, and the things that I dreamt about being able to do, that made the process really fun and interesting. So that's how I came to it. So somebody wore me down.
Writing my own publication with Great River Learning allowed me to put out there what I feel is most important. I just decided that I wanted to have exactly what I wanted in the textbook and what I felt like that the students needed most. And through this, we have expanded even more. And best for me as a public health nutritionist, I'm teaching and reaching more students with health-related principles that helps me to affect more lives and teach them these principles without costing more for the university. So that's been a good thing. That's one reason that attracted me to write the publication, was because of the marketing of the fact that it totally is catering to the current students' way of learning and how they want to learn and how they thrive in learning.
It provided me the ability to write a text that was designed for a class and not a nation of classes.
I had several issues with other textbooks, and I had tried several of them, and none of them fit particularly well. There's good things and bad things about all of them, but this was a good opportunity to kind of make my class a little bit more my own, I suppose. And I found that none of the books that I was using were satisfactory. So I felt like I was changing, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this book this time. And now I'm going to try this other book. And so I just never really felt satisfied. And then I felt I was having to chop up the textbook and have them go back and read this thing, because it was more chronological instead of, our book is chronological, but it's also thematic, and more even maybe geographical kind of gets in there. It's not strictly chronological, which I feel like gets problematic, because then you have sort of this like diachronic sort of thing where you're going back and forth instead of, maybe just going back in time a few times to look at things more uniformly.
I can make the textbook align with the way that I want to present the material, the order in which I want to present material, as opposed to trying to adjust to other people's decisions.
When I was contacted by Great River, I immediately saw the application of the electronic format to the vision that I had. The vision that had hyperlinks out to cooperative extension websites and the latest information, and then also to allow students to do interactive kind of things. And horticulture is very hands-on, so this seemed like the bridge between teaching a full-on hands-on class where you're standing next to the students all the time and that old textbook that was on the shelf. And I also have worked with young students for my career, and they're very technologically electronic savvy. So kind of the best kept secret in academia is professors don't really use textbooks too much anymore in certain disciplines, because that textbook that I may be using that was written 5 or 6 years ago isn't covering the new things, and it may not even talk about climate change, and it sure isn't probably talking about sustainability. With the electronic format, we could make those changes and update those changes so they reflect the current knowledge. And then the hyperlinks are always out to that current knowledge. So for me, it was like, wow, this is exactly the style and the format that I always envisioned teaching horticulture as.
The book is up to date. Students can keep it and read it forever, and then they'll get pushed any new updates that I give them. So even if they took it, last year, 2 years ago, whatever is new in there now will be in their textbook. I know that these future forensic scientists have the most up-to-date information, which makes me feel a little bit better.
I was approached by one of your former colleagues, and she reached out to me at a time when I was kind of frustrated, with other materials that were out there. There were good materials out there, but what I found with the traditional publisher's model was, you write something and then it's 4 years later you do another edition, and 2 years later another edition, and you're always behind what's happening, in your field, right? For example, during that time, Brexit was a hot issue in the UK, and was Britain going to leave the EU? Was it going to leave the, what were the impacts of all that? It's a very hot issue. There were no publications discussing this because it was so up to the minute. So I thought this would be great. Here's my chance to take all my stories and put them in one place. Chance for me to frame the discussions, frame the education. So from my perspective, looking backwards, if I had known about, the different schools of thought, as from chapter 1, in economics, that would really help me understand, as I learned the different theories. I wanted to frame all this for the students to make it easier for them. This is a great idea for me to organize the way I want and bring some current videos into the publication, and also to be able to change it as often as I need to, which I love. I don't have to wait for 2 years until next publication deadline or edition to make it work. So students get up to the minute.
One of the great things about Great Rivers Learning and about doing an ebook is that you can update your book so frequently.
And so one of the things I very much try to do with my students is be like, let me show you how to use this, where you can use it to aid you, not have it be your companion, not have it be your brain for you. We still need to hear your voice. You still need to think through this, but if you have an area where you're struggling, let's utilize it the best way possible to sort of help with that.
I had been working already on a couple projects for my music theory classes, like apps and things like that to make those classes online materials. And so when the opportunity came up with GRL, I was really involved with teaching music appreciation at the time. I had quite a few sections of that. And I said, oh yeah, I'd be really interested in doing that. And I kind of developed my own approach to teaching music appreciation because I've been doing it for a few years then. And I went, oh, I wish I had a book that did just what I wanted to do, that was a little more concise. And one of the important things about the book was that I have so many students who take music appreciation because they think, I love music, this will be an easy class for me to take. I can get my humanities credit and take this class. But I ran into a lot of what I would consider a type of prejudice. And I don't mean that in a really bad way, just in a way that we have our preferences in music. Music is so emotional to us that we have things we really like and things we don't like. It's part of what I wanted to do. Well, part of what you have to do in music appreciation is open the appreciation to all kinds of music. But I found I was not able to open as many doors with the textbook when we just started history, going straight through history. So my textbook really starts at the beginning with a scientific approach. We even have a whole first chapter on science. What is the science of sound and music? And then we talk about sort of being an anthropologist in terms of music. How would you look at it objectively? How would you be able to describe the music of the whole world to an alien race? So you can't just talk about what's in your culture. What are all the cultures and all the music? So that was really one of the primary things that I wanted to address, was get students' minds open immediately. And to do that, you have to sort of give them the power of opening their mind, giving them the choice to look at music objectively.
I taught an honors class for the Cook's Honors College at Indiana University of Pennsylvania one summer. It was for junior and senior high school students. And it was like an immersive experience for them to see what college is like. And so I taught that. And it was really the first class where I built it all around music. And I called it Memories and Melodies, oddly enough. And there was something about that class that always stuck with me. At the end of the semester, we did a full performance. I brought my drums into the classroom and we did songs together that they wrote. And it was really my dream. It was like, this is what I want all my classes to be like. And so after that happened, I thought, I'd really like to organize this somehow, but I don't know the first thing about writing a textbook or creating it. So that was the thought. And then years later, I had the opportunity to connect with you all. And it was the perfect timing because I had spent all that time mapping out in my mind what I wanted to do. And so once I had the green light, the book practically wrote itself because all the ideas were already there. And so, yeah, but I've been wanting to do it for a long time. You all have been incredibly instrumental in bringing this whole thing to fruition and making it much better than I would have ever been able to do on my own. The editing process itself was streamlined, it was very efficient, it was quick, it was detailed. Jonathan and the team were really working hard to preserve what it was I was trying to say or do, and just helping me fine tune it and, present it in a way that was going to resonate with students. But the process was so simple. I mean, I can't say enough good things.
I just want to sort of communicate just how enjoyable it's been to work with GRO with this particular book, and how the ability to be able to update the text and to make modifications, and even the ability to just have conversations has really made the whole process enjoyable. So I just want to thank you for that. That's not always the case with publishers. I personally have found this to be a very responsive and enjoyable relationship. So I want to thank you for that.
We were trying to find a book that met certain needs, but also that was user-friendly from the faculty standpoint. What's great about this textbook is there are all of these built-in assessments, and we wanted to make sure that that was not a burden for the faculty, that these online assessments are meant to be a positive feature. And so one of my goals was that it was going to be user-friendly for my colleagues, that it wasn't going to be cumbersome to learn this new platform. And then also at the same time that it wasn't super directive, that they wouldn't feel like the textbook was forcing them to take a certain approach in their classes. And I do think I've met that goal just from talking to colleagues about how they're using the assessments. Deanna knows from our many conversations over the past 2 years that one of my favorite parts about the textbook is these knowledge checks, the chapter. And faculty can choose to have them as a pre-read, like a pre-assessment read-through, come to class having thought about it, how's that going, maybe a post-assessment from the class. So I wanted a book that the students could also have as a pre-read or as a afterword. I remember one of my professors had me read, that was our homework, and I did it, to read before class. And I would come to class so confused. I just couldn't learn from the textbook. And so I wanted a textbook that I hope students could learn from. Not that I wanted to replace the wonderful interactions in the classroom, but that it spoke to them. They could kind of pick up on it, and it wasn't something that they had to kind of read after the fact. That they could, of course. I think most textbooks are always okay after you've got that foundation and kind of helping make more connections, more examples, that kind of thing. But I wanted it to be something that would be an okay first exposure. Admittedly, I haven't flat out asked my students that, but I do know that at least some of them are reading the textbook based on some things that they've shared with me. So I think I've met the goal in terms of helping my colleagues. At the beginning, it feels very daunting and overwhelming, for sure. And I think recognizing, especially if it's a partnership like this, where it's that digital platform and it's ever evolving, to kind of recognize that for yourself right from the start, that you can kind of tweak things. The team at Great River Learning kind of helped me with that.